Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. We are continuing with Hilchot Pesach, Siman Taf Mem Zayin 447. I realize we only have about 6 weeks left till Pesach, and so we're going to extract the main and more relevant and practical seifim over the next few weeks, so that we can cover as much ground as possible. We need to cover the ground of this chapter with regards to mixtures, which is crucial, a really important siman. We need to cover Chametz Shavar Lava Pesach. We need to cover Mechirat Chametz, Hagalat Kelim. Right? We're not going to go into any details of the Seder. That's something we discussed in previous years. So we've got lots to get through, and B'ezras Hashem, we will do as much as we can. So, Siman Taf Mem Zayin. I've posted the link of Sefaria in the chat box. I'll do it once more. And what we have here are the halachot of different mixtures, forbidden and permissible things on Pesach, and the status of them. So last week we talked about what happens if you find chametz in your house over Pesach. That was 446, and we began Siman Taf Mem Zayin talking about different mixtures, and we explained the principles, the basic principles of Hilchot Kashrut and how they apply on Pesach. And we said that the opinion of the vast majority of the Rishonim is that although generally speaking during the rest of the year, lah belah, which means moist, two things which are moist mixed with each other, it's nullified 1 in 60. On Pesach, however, and by the way, when we say lah belah, it doesn't have to be two moist things. That means either two moist things or a liquid into a solid, although normally that would be nullified 1 in 60. The opinion of the majority of the Rishonim is that this is nullified not at all on Pesach. Afilu be'elef lo batel. This is the unique din of Pesach. Two reasons are given for this chumrah of Pesach. One reason is because of the severity of karet of Pesach. The second reason given is because it's davar sheyesh lo matirin. It's something which will become permissible in 7 days' time, as opposed to a regular mixture of forbidden items. And so that is the opinion which is agreed upon by the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, despite the fact that the Rabbeinu Tam and some of the Geonim held that the same halachot of nullification apply on Pesach, but we don't hold of that. But it's important to recognize there is such an opinion for certain situations. Then we discussed that this stringency of 1 in 60 doesn't apply is with regards to liquids or a liquid in a solid or vice versa. Whenever it's two solids which touch each other, there everyone agrees there is no chumrah of Pesach here, there's no stringency, and the regular laws apply, which are that if basically what's relevant for us on Pesach is that if a solid touches a solid chametz touches a solid non-chametz, then you need to take off kedei klipa, one peel of where it touched, unless they are fatty. One of the items are fatty, then actually has the ability to transfer all the way through. But if you have a dry piece of halaf with a dry piece of matzah touching each other on Pesach, even imagine that chametz touched the matzah on Pesach, it's still mutar to eat the matzah on Pesach. All you have to do is cut off the place where it touched each other, and that's fine. Just like the rest of the year, the halacha applies. So too on Pesach, this same halacha applies unless it was fatty. Okay. Then the second thing we said, Sif Bet, was that if chametz got mixed in from 6 hours from Chatzot until Pesach, then this stringency that we learned, that 1 in 60th, doesn't apply on Pesach. That which we learned, that even 1 in 1,000 doesn't get nullified, that doesn't apply on Erev Pesach, even though it's a time where you're not allowed to eat chametz, but because actual Pesach has not kicked in, there the regular laws of nullification would work, and therefore it would be permissible. Okay. Sif Gimel is about a chicken, a live chicken which you found and you're about to slaughter it, or a dead chicken and you found within it a piece of wheat. There's important things there, but I'm not going to go into it now. If we got time, we'll go into it. I want to really focus on Sif Daled, Hey, Tet and Yud, 4, 5, 9, and 10. And then once we have learned that, we can start to understand many things with regards to Hechsherim on Pesach and different stringencies, especially between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim. So let's get right into it. Siman Taf Mem Zayin Seif Daled 4474 says the Shulchan Aruch. Im nit'arev hametz kodem Pesach v'nitbatel b'shishim. If Chametz mixed in to non-Chametz, which you're going to use over Pesach, and there was 60 times more non-Chametz than there is Chametz, so we learned that becomes nullified. We learned it even becomes nullified from 6 hours. Erev Pesach, it becomes nullified. Okay, great. So it's nullified. Says Maran, Eino hozer v'ne'or b'Pesach le'esor b'mashehu. It does not return and reawaken on Pesach to become prohibited. Remember we learned that if Chametz mixes in, if you have a soup and a piece of Chametz, a crumb of Chametz, the builders coming in, the non-Jew came in, and a piece of Chametz fell in on Pesach, the whole thing becomes asur till after Pesach, the whole mixture. But if it happened before Pesach, it's fine. But perhaps you could argue and you could say that, okay, it got nullified before Pesach. But when Pesach now comes, it reawakens. Because now, on Pesach, you now have 1,000 times non-Chametz, one piece of Chametz. So true, it became nullified before Pesach, but now it reawakens on Pesach. No, we don't say that. Says the Shulchan Aruch, V'yesh holkim, but some disagree with this. Some disagree and they say that, yes, true, we said it becomes nullified before Pesach, but once Pesach kicks in, then it reawakens. It's chozer v'ne'or. It comes alive again. And therefore, even though it was nullified before Pesach, now it comes in and it kicks in and it becomes asur again, even though it mixed in before Pesach. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, according to the second opinion, the Yesh Cholkim, those who say it reawakens, what's the point of the halacha that if it got mixed in before Pesach, it becomes nullified? We're talking about eating it on Pesach, obviously, because it's Chametz and Matzah. Chametz and non-Chametz. So we're talking about eating it on Pesach. So who cares if it became nullified before Pesach? What's the point of this halacha that if it fell in before Pesach, got mixed in, it's mutar? It's not necessary because when Pesach comes in, it reawakens. This opinion holds that two things. Firstly, is that this is relevant for the 6 hours, i.e. from Hatzot till Pesach. So even though it reawakens on Pesach, it only reawakens when Pesach kicks in. But it got nullified before. And now you can eat it even on Erev Pesach in the afternoon. There's Chametz in it, yeah, but the Chametz is more than 1 in 60, it's nullified. When Pesach comes in, you won't be able to eat it. So the halacha that it becomes nullified before Pesach, the regular laws, 1 in 60, is relevant for a case where there is relevant to a case of Erev Pesach in the afternoon. That's one possibility of the application of this halacha. The second application of this halacha is that if something, that which we say reawakens, is only if there's mamashut, if there is something there, it reawakens on Pesach. But taste, even the second opinion holds, doesn't reawaken. So let me give you the following scenario. You're cooking before Pesach, and you have your big pot of soup, and a piece of bread fell in. Piece of bread fell into the soup. So there's 60 times more. Okay, so what do you do now? You take the piece of bread out and you strain the soup. So there's no pieces left, but it was a boiling hot soup. So that means some of the taste of the bread got absorbed in the soup. But the amount of soup corresponding to the taste which got absorbed in the soup is much more than 1 in 60. So it's permissible, it becomes nullified before Pesach. Even those who hold it reawakens on Pesach will say that here it doesn't reawaken because here it's only ta'am. Ta'am, that which we learned that if it got mixed in before Pesach doesn't reawaken, Even on Pesach, it doesn't reawaken. That's the ta'am, the taste. And therefore, everyone would agree you would be allowed to eat the soup if you strained it, because there are no mamashut, there's no pieces left. There's only a ta'am left. Ta'am, it got mixed in, the taste got mixed in before Pesach. 1 in 60 nullified. Hence, on Pesach, it's fine to eat, and it doesn't reawaken. Everyone agrees to that. When did the Yesh Holkim, when did those who say that it reawakens hold that it's a problem on Pesach? That's when there's a piece there. According to the first opinion, that doesn't reawaken, even if even if you didn't strain the soup, even if there are actual tiny pieces of bread in the soup, it's still fine, because you got a big pot of soup and there's 60 times more, and it was nullified before Pesach. When Pesach comes in, it's fine. It doesn't reawaken. So these are two major opinions with regards to all kinds of mixtures on Pesach. According to the first opinion, which is the Rosh, the Rashba, and others, it doesn't reawaken. Once it's been nullified before Pesach, as we have learned, 1 in 60, regular laws of kashrut, it stays kasher to eat the 6 hours on Erev Pesach and also throughout Pesach. The Yesh Holkim, the second opinion, which many understand is the opinion of the Rambam. I have to put that out. It's not explicit in the Rambam, but it does. That's how the Rava Magid understands the Rambam. The Rambam holds that it does reawaken on Pesach. So in what scenario is it important to know that something got mixed in before Pesach and got nullified? Either to be able to eat it on Erev Pesach in the afternoon, or if it got mixed in and there's only ta'am left, then even the second opinion, the Yesh Holkim, would agree that you are allowed to eat that on Pesach and it doesn't reawaken on Pesach. Good. Now, what's the halakha? So generally, we have a principle in the Shulchan Aruch, stam v'yesh. And sorry, one other introduction is that don't forget that this whole din which we are talking about, whether it reawakens or not, is a din d'oraita or d'Rabbanan. It's a din d'Rabbanan, because we already learned last week. Midoraita, even on Pesach itself, everyone agrees. If 1 in 60 becomes nullified, this is a din d'Rabbanan. And even this din d'Rabbanan, we already learned, Rabbeinu Tam held that it doesn't apply. It's not true. The same laws of kashrut throughout the year apply on Pesach as well. But fine, we don't follow that. And we do hold on Pesach itself, even 1 in 1,000, b'mashu is not nitbatel, it's not nullified. But it's a din d'Rabbanan. So we have here a mahloket in the Shulchan Aruch, two opinions. Whether this din d'Rabbanan of not being nullified when it happened before Pesach, does it reawaken on Pesach or not? Generally speaking, stam v'yesh, when you have a default opinion in the Shulchan Aruch, followed by some disagree, some say, halacha follows the stam, the one where he doesn't say some say. And therefore, the consensus of the poskim is that the strict halacha, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is that it does not reawaken on Pesach, even if it's more than a taste, even if there are actual pieces mixed in, even if there's a speck and match mamashut, there's actual substance. Nonetheless, if it got mixed in together before Pesach, it's nullified on before Pesach, and it stays nullified throughout the course of Pesach, and you can eat it. Understood? That's really important. But if you understand what we're learning now, and the next if you understand everything got to do with hechsherim and kashrut on Pesach. This is crucial what we're learning now. Now, that's the Shulchan Aruch. So we can come out and we can say Sfaradim generally, and this is certainly the opinion of Hamav hold that if nullified by Pesach, it stays nullified during the course of Pesach. What does the Ramah for the Ashkenazim hold? Says the Ramah, ונוהגין כסברה ראשונה בכל תערובות שהוא לח בלח. We can be lenient and follow the first opinion. He makes a compromise. He says, when it's lach belach, as we've learned, lach belach, moist and moist, where it's all liquid mixed in with each other. So there's no mamashut. It's all liquid. It's all completely intermingled with one another. So then we can say and be lenient and hold like the first opinion, that if it got mixed in, completely intermingled before Pesach, it stays like that on Pesach and does not reawaken. If, however, there is a yavesh be'yavesh, or a dry in a liquid, So then he continues, Umihu bedavar yavesh shenitarev או שיש לו תערובת, כגון פת שנפל ליין, אף על פי שאותו משם, אסור בפסח, דרך השין שמתרבה פעם בפסח. So, the example he gives, the example I gave earlier on, you have a wine which you're using for Seder night, and bread fell into it before Pesach. You have a big barrel of wine, and bread fell into it. So this is not lach belach. It's not liquid with liquid. It's a solid falling into a liquid. Here we have to be stringent, and we have to take on that it becomes nullified before Pesach, but it reawakens on Pesach itself. And therefore the Rama is being posek. Generally speaking, most mixtures will have an element of solid, unless it's two pure liquids mixed in with each other. When it's two pure liquids mixed with each other, even the Rama for the Ashkenazim says you can be lenient, and you can say if it happened before Pesach, it stays like that on Pesach. But when there's an element of solid involved, then you have to be strict and say, although it nullified before Pesach, and you can eat it on Erev Pesach in the afternoon, but on Pesach itself, you cannot eat it because it reawakens. Now, really important is that this second opinion, which says that it reawakens, okay? And the Rama follows it to some extent. In most cases, he follows it. What does that mean? My question is as follows. Let's take the example of bread which fed into wine. So the bread fed into wine, I took the piece of bread out. There are likely to be pieces of bread. I didn't strain the wine. I didn't strain the wine. If I strained the wine, by the way, then everyone would agree it's fine. Because all that's left is ta'am, taste of the bread which fell into the wine. And we know that both opinions hold that ta'am certainly doesn't reawake. So I'm talking I didn't strain the wine. And there are probably some floating tiny pieces of bread. Tiny piece. You can't see it. It's mixed in. It's really small. You can't get it. And I don't have time to strain it now. I don't want to strain it. So there are pieces of Chametz in this wine. So what will you say? According to the first opinion, Shulchan Aruch, according to the Stam Shulchan Aruch, it's fine because there's 60 times more wine. And according to the Rama, it's a problem. Even this isn't clear because Mishnah Berurah brings actually Mahloket Achronim. That which we say reawakens, some say the second opinion, which wholly reawakens, is only when you further go and cook it. It doesn't happen automatically, some magic, if it got nullified before Pesach and it stays in its same state over Pesach, it doesn't magically come alive again. You need some action to be able to reawaken it. It only becomes reawakened when you involve heat in it. This is really important. So that means, now, this is a mahloket in the Mishnah Berurah. He seems to be mahmir, but recognize that we're talking about a few chumrot, one on top of each other. Because as we said, the actual din that's not nullified on Pesach 160 is the halacha, unlike Rabbeinu Tam. One. Number two, it's a din derabanan. Number three, there's a mahloket whether if it got nullified for Pesach, does it reawaken on Pesach. Even those who hold it does reawaken on Pesach. Number four, even those who hold it does reawaken on Pesach. There are those who understand that only reawakens when there is heat applied. There is something which brings it out and brings it alive again. Not just it just happens, boom, Pesach comes in, it comes alive again. So you need heat to reawaken it. That's a mahloket. It's a debate, but recognize that even the Yesh Polkim, even the Mahmirim, you may need some heat in order to reawaken the nullified mixture from before Pesach. Now, taking all of that into consideration now, if we work through some items of Pesach, which people will tell you need a hechsher for, you'll see that for Sfaradim certainly, and even sometimes for Ashkenazim, you don't need. Simple example, olive oil. I can give you tens of examples. Olive oil. So, do you need a hechsher on olive oil? Well, let's work it through. You look at the ingredients, and you can trust. And by the way, we can trust the ingredients. No one's saying that you can't trust the ingredients because we live in a civilized country. We live in a country with regulations. And what says on the bottle is what you're getting. And you don't have to start worrying that perhaps someone's trying to trick you and trying to put it Chametz. Yeah, we don't think like that. So everyone agrees that so you look at the ingredients are 100% olive oil. So why do I need hechsher on that? I'll tell you why I need hechsher on it. Because perhaps in the production facilities, someone mixed some chametz by mistake, a drop. Now they don't have to disclose that if it's a drop. Yeah? You don't have to disclose if it was a drop. Okay, but this happened before Pesach. And you're looking at the oil, there's certainly nothing there to your eyes. So, and you're buying this before Pesach. So this got nullified before Pesach. If this happened, and we're going to talk about this concern, do you have to in the next Eve? But even if imagine this happened, a non-Jewish worker was making his oil and some bread fell into the oil and he took it out, but there's a drop there, something there, and it got mixed in. But it got nullified before Pesach. So what's the concern? The concern is that you buy that oil and then you put it in your pan, you heat it up on Pesach, it reawakens. Perhaps there's a drop of chametz there. And that is a reasonable concern and halacha for the Ashkenazi. Like the Rama is posek, that he is posek, it reawakens in most scenarios. But for us Faradim, if we're following the Stam Shulchan Aruch, the default opinion, the main opinion, the first opinion of Shulchan Aruch, that it doesn't reawaken, what's there to worry about? I bought this before Pesach. Even if this very remote possibility happens, even if it happened, fine, it got nullified. It doesn't reawaken on Pesach. Even when I put it in my pan and I heat it up, it doesn't reawaken. It became nullified. It's nullified for Pesach. And this is why I tell people every single year, and I can't tell you how many people have told me how much money I've saved them every year. It's mutar to buy all natural things which don't have the 5 grains in them from before Pesach, as long as you buy it before Pesach and the ingredients are 100% and there are no different ingredients you don't recognize, you're allowed to buy it without hechsher, and there's absolutely no need to go and buy it with hechsher. You want to be mahmir? That's fine. Why? Because you want to follow the Rama and you want to follow the second opinion of Shulchan Aruch Yesh Cholkim. Some disagree. Tavo alecha beracha. May you be blessed for doing so. But to impose that upon a community, I believe is wrong, because the difference in prices are so high that this is something which, remember, we're not talking about a concern of a doraita here. You want to, yeah, if it was a doraita, I would say, be mahmir. Perhaps we should follow the Yesh Cholkim, even though it's not this time. We're talking about the Rabbanan, which even the Rabbanan, Rabbeinu Tam disagreed with. So we're talking about the Rabbanan, and on the Rabbanan, there's a mahloket where the reawakens, and the concern is very remote, and we're going to address that in the next Eve. There's no need to be mahmir. And therefore, oil, salt, sugar, teas, coffees, all of these things are clear, they're natural. You know what the ingredients are, what's written on the box is there in the box. Even things like yogurt. Yogurt doesn't need to be kasher la Pesach. If you buy it throughout the year, non-halav Israel, you have halav akum, you have Greek yogurt, you have all different kinds of yogurt. You can buy that before Pesach and eat it on Pesach. Because what's the concern? As we've explained, all of these things do not need a hechsher for Pesach, and that makes most things you can buy without a hechsher. Most things you can buy without a hechsher. Anything with the 5 grains or anything with numbers, be this, see this, you don't know what these are. Okay, so then you can't. Yeah, so obviously, then you have to get with hechsher. Otherwise, natural things what's written on the box is what you're getting. You do not need hechsher for the reasons we've explained. Now, I do have to say, the Ben Ish Chai was mahmir like the Yesh Cholkim and like the Rama, and that's fine. And like I said, those who want to be mahmir, they should be mahmir. But the halacha, we need to know what the halacha is. The letter of the law is that it's permissible. You want to be strict, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. But don't impose that upon other people. Now, a question which I'm sometimes asked, and it's a very good question, I don't have a full adequate answer, is fine. great. I'm going to go and buy all of these things without a hechsher. But I'm having Ashkenazim around to my house on Pesach. Now, for them, there are grounds to say that they need to buy these things with a hechsher. There are there are grounds to say they need to buy it with a hechsher. And so, can I now buy these things and then invite them and then not? So that's a difficult question to answer. I don't have I don't have an answer. I've never actually found someone who discusses this question. I would imagine the answer is no, that if you are planning to have Ashkenazi guests, then one needs to be stringent because you're feeding them, or at least disclose to them that this is what you're following. But I still believe, based on what we're going to see now in CFA, that I don't. The default would be that you need to tell them and you need to buy things with Echsher. But I still think there's room to be lenient, and we'll see why in CFA. But that's the end of Sif Daled. Really important. That principle number one, very important, which we've learned, which has far-reaching ramifications. Before we see Sif Hey, let's quickly see the questions. According to the Rama, can you strain the wine in Chametz? No, you have to strain it before Pesach. What would reawaken it? Contact with water? No. It needs heat. According to those who hold you need something, you need heat to reawaken it. So that would mean products which would most certainly be heated with would kal v'homer be kasher. Which won't be heated, which won't be heated with carbonization. Yes, of course, certainly. All the more so, because then even according to the Shorkim, we define rice cakes. Another example, you buy regular rice cakes throughout the year from supermarkets. You can buy those rice cakes from before Pesach. Now, I keep on saying from before Pesach, because why is it have to be from before Pesach? Because if you buy it on, you're not going to be buying on 2 days Chag, so you're buying on Chol HaMoed. Now you're buying on Chol HaMoed, there is the possibility that it was produced on first day, second day Chag, and came to the supermarket on Chol HaMoed morning, and you go to the supermarket, you're buying, so it could be. So therefore, you need to buy it for Pesach. I still think that's a Humrah, and you'll see why in Sif Hey, why I think you don't need to actually, well, there's room to say that you can be lenient with that. Okay, quick question before we move on to Sif Hey. Yes, Robert?
If you've got a date of manufacture on the product and you're going on Chol HaMoed to Tesco's, really? Does it work? Because maybe it has to be in Jewish ownership before it can be batel. In other words, let's say you know for certain this was made 3 weeks before Pesach. However, you know.
That's fine.
Right? Can it be batel in the hands of a goy, or does it have to be batel in the hands of Jew? In other words,
no, of course, of course, of course, it can be batel in the hands of a goy. Definitely. It's not a
religion. That was my question.
This is a mitziot, a reality thing. It's not a
mitziot. I'm just double checking. It's a thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Next Sif now, Sif Hey. Another important principle. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Basar yavesh, ugvina, vedagim. So you got dry meat, dried chicken, fish, cheese. Shenimlehu kodem Pesach v'lo nizaru b'hem. They were salted before Pesach, and you weren't careful with them. What does it mean you weren't careful? You weren't careful with them. That means, not talking about you didn't watch over them. It means you weren't careful with them. That means that when you salted them, you didn't check to see the salt has got no bread in it, has got no pieces of chametz in it. You took regular salt lying around and you salted your meat, fish, cheese, and you want to now go and use this meat, fish, cheese on Pesach. So there is the concern. There's two concerns. Concern number one is that the salt which you salted your products with were salt which had mixed within them chametz. That's number one. Second concern is, where did you salt them? You salted them in a chametz utensil. So perhaps you could argue, we know that salting extracts. Yeah, that's why we salt meat. We extract the blood. So perhaps you could say that salting it in a chametz kli, in a chametz utensil, is going to extract the taste of the bliot, of what's been absorbed in the walls of the chametz utensil, and it's going to come out into the food. Right. Says the Shulchan Aruch, mutar le'ochlam ba'Pesach. you are allowed to eat these foods on Pesach, even if you salted it in a non-kosher, in a chametz utensil. Why? So with regards to the concern that it's a chametz utensil, important. Meliha doesn't have the ability, salting doesn't have the ability to extract from utensils. It's an important principle that it's in the whole of kashrut. Melicha cannot take out bliot. And therefore that concern not to worry about. Even if you salt it in a chametz utensil, in a clean chametz utensil, you don't have to worry about the bliot. Also, stam kelim enan ben yoman. Default utensils are considered to not have been used in the last 24 hours. And if you haven't used the utensil in the last 24 hours, even if there is real chametz and real taref in the walls of it, if you cooked, you shouldn't have, if you cooked in it, it's fine, because after 24 hours, any taste which will come out is a bad taste, and that's mutar, bad taste, throughout the year and also on Pesach, as we will learn tonight. So therefore, you don't have to worry about the fact you salted it in a chametz utensil. Perhaps in the salt itself, you weren't careful which salt you used. Perhaps that salt itself is salt which had chametz in it. Answer is twofold. Firstly, what we've been learning, obviously, that you would have seen if it was more than 60 in the salt, chametz in the salt. That's number one. So it would have been, even if there was chametz in the salt, there would have been 60 times more. Secondly, says the Rishonim, lo mahzekinan isura. This is a crucial principle to understand. Don't presume, even with chametz, we don't presume things are problematic or prohibited. Some people go around on Pesach thinking that there is chametz lurking in every corner, waiting to catch you. And in every single kind of food, someone put in a piece of chametz and said, no. Don't assume that there is an isur. Rabbeinu Peret, the Beit Yosef brings this. I should really share it. I'll try to find it and share it, because it's a really important point. We don't need to assume that there's chametz lying around. Yeah, okay, if you saw chametz, it's something else. But hazakah, the default is things are not chametz. You think there aren't chametz lying around trying to catch you out. And therefore, even though you didn't check the salt, to ensure that the salt is got nothing mixed in with it. Remember, it's not like the salt trap nowadays, all nicely packaged. Salt lying around on the countertop in your kitchen a few hundred years ago. Perhaps there was hametz mixed in there. Okay, perhaps there was. Probably it was 60 times all been nullified. Secondly, don't assume that. You don't have to worry about the fact that perhaps there is hametz there. And therefore, says the Shulchan Aruch, mutar leochlam ba'pesach. You can have these foods, the meat, the fish, even though it's salted with salt, which you don't know where the salt came from, you can assume it's kosher salt, and you can assume there's 60 times more, and therefore it's mutar to eat these foods on Pesach. Continues the Shulchan Aruch. Mihu, however, dagim meluchim ashruim b'mayim b'Pesach. Sorry, one thing I should have mentioned, I never mentioned earlier on. What does salting mean? What does, when we say salting potentially go on issue, salting means salting to the extent where it's inedible because of the salt. So you would salt it very heavily and then you wash it off, right? So that's when I say salt, it doesn't mean anything with salt in. When we're talking about salting in kashrut for these purposes, salting means salting it to the extent that it's inedible whilst it's got the salt on. Okay. Mihu, however, dagim meluchim ashruim b'mayim b'Pesach bikli hametz. If, however, you do it on Pesach, you leave salty fish, really salty fish, soaked in water in chametz utensils, then one should be mahmir and not eat that because it was salted on Pesach in the chametz utensils on Pesach. We said it doesn't be maflit, doesn't extend. Okay, it's a humrah, or a number of reasons. If it happened on Pesach itself, you don't. If you salted kasher Pesach food in utensils, chametz utensils on Pesach, then perhaps you should be mahmir. So questions in a second. Says the Rama, V'yesh holkinu mahmirim. He's going back to the beginning of the Sif. That which we said you can rely on the salt and don't have to worry about the salt and you're allowed to eat that on Pesach, says the Rama, some are stringent. In our countries, we're stringent in the first instance, not to eat these foods which were salted with salt which you don't know were completely clean from Chametz. But even then, if you wash the meat 3 times, properly, completely rinsed it, soaked it, got rid of any potential salt on it, and even then you could be lenient. So the Rama says that the minhag is to be mahmir. Why? So let's go through it. Firstly, because he holds, as we've learned, that Hoser Veneore reawakens. And secondly, is that he is concerned that we do have to worry that perhaps there is chametz lurking, perhaps there is chametz in the salt. Okay, the rest of the seif here in the Rama, we don't need to see its specific examples of things, we don't need to do it. But let's summarize what we've seen in seif Hey. What we've seen here is the Shulchan Aruch is laying out that you're allowed to eat food which was salted before Pesach with salt which you don't know where the salt was from. You're allowed to eat that on Pesach because even if there was problem with the salt, it would be nullified. And secondly, you don't have to assume that there's problems. The Rama, however, says that the custom in the first instance, in most scenarios, is to be stringent because it does reawaken. And secondly, we can't just assume that all the salt is kosher. But remember, the salt was salt which was not like nowadays, where it's let's speak out some examples now. So coming back to the examples we gave before, all the things we said. So olive oil, salt, sugar, coffee, tea, yogurts, rice cakes, crisps. What's the concern? Chametz fell in. It would happen for Pesach. It would be nullified and it doesn't reawaken. You want to be mahmir for the opinion which says it does reawaken? The yesh holkim. You want to follow the Ben Ish Chai, you want to be mahmir, but then you've got the principle in Sif Hey that you don't need to assume that there is Hametz. So on a double level here, really, it's very difficult to understand why you should be buying these things with a Echsher. Especially nowadays, with the conditions of manufacturing, which are so rigorous. And, it's highly unlikely that in an olive oil production, there's going to be any chametz lying around there. You have huge buildings, machinery to make these things. Why on earth would there be a drop of chametz? So perhaps the non-Jewish worker who was eating his lunch whilst producing. Okay, firstly, if he did that, Sif Dalad. It's nullified, doesn't reawaken. Secondly is, why assume that? Why on earth would you assume? Don't assume things like that. You don't have to worry about that. And on top of all of this, this is the Rabbanan. So therefore, the Rama, however, takes a more stringent opinion. The Rama says, no, it perhaps does reawaken. And secondly, perhaps you do have to be worried. But again, the Rama was talking about salt, which is lying around, and wasn't careful. Would the Rama say the same, that you have to be concerned in a factory where there's one product being made that perhaps the Hametz said? I don't know. And therefore, coming back to what we said earlier on, firstly, with regards to buying before Pesach, we said you should buy before Pesach because perhaps it was manufactured on, if you buy in Chol HaMoed, it was manufactured on Pesach and then it wouldn't be nullified. There are grounds to say that you can even buy on Chol HaMoed morning based on Seif Hey, because who said even if it was manufactured on first day, second day Chag, and it came to the supermarket on Chol HaMoed, even if that happened, but why and therefore nullification wouldn't work. But why assume that in such clinical conditions, and this is how they are really nowadays, as Maor says in the chat box here, there's cross-contamination regulations, there's allergy regulations, there are so many regulations, right? Especially when it comes to gluten and these kinds of things where people have severe allergies, right? Why would you assume? And therefore, I not posek this when people ask me, But I do believe, strict letter of the law, one can even buy these things on Pesach itself. In the first instance, I always tell people, make sure to buy these things before Pesach, just to cover all bases and really. But there are grounds to say that one can buy these things. And if you buy milk, you buy milk, regular milk, you don't buy halal Yisrael milk during the year, you can definitely buy milk before Pesach and use it over Pesach. And as we've learned, I think there are strong grounds to say that one can even buy these things on Pesach itself, although it would be better if you buy these things before Pesach, freeze them and use them during the course of Pesach. That's what we do. That's what we do. And we always try to buy everything before Pesach. Although, strictly speaking, if we were ever stuck, there would be grounds to say that one could buy these things on Pesach. That's question number one. Number two is the question we said earlier about having Ashkenazim by you. Again, like I said, if based on just on Seif Daled, it potentially is a problem because they are strict. They are not reawakened. But then based on what we learned in Seif Hey, there are grounds to say it's permissible because you don't have to be worried. The Rama said, do be worried. Again, the Rama was talking about salt, something where, it's mixed around, salting it's lying around, it's mixed around other things, etc., etc. Yeah, then perhaps there's an issue. But in the conditions which we have nowadays, I think there's a strong argument to say even the Rama would agree it's permissible. And therefore, again, I'm not paskening now with regards to if you have Ashkenazi guests with you coming to you on Pesach, do you then have to buy things with Echsher? I do believe there are strong grounds to say that one can follow the halakha here in Seif Daled and Seif Hey and buy things that are Echsher, and I think even feed and host and entertain Ashkenazim. Although I can understand those who would be more mahmir there. Again, I'm not giving a psak here with regards to that specific question. I don't want to give a psak on it, but I don't. I would like to see if others agree first before passing that. But as you can see, from what we've learned, I think there are strong grounds to say it would be permissible based on what we've learned. Okay, so those are two important principles which we've seen so far. We've got a couple more to see in Seif Tet and Seif Yud. Questions quickly before we continue. Ma'or.
Would you prefer to leave it to the end?
If it's a quick one, go ahead.
If you could just please clarify, what about Seif Hey addresses this no need for the whole is it the ta'am aspect?
Sorry, what did you say? Repeat. What did you say? Start
Could
again.
you please explain what is it about Seif Hey that says that we don't really need this humwat? Is it the ta'am aspect of salting that?
No, that which we say you're allowed to. Yeah, the salt, you used salt to salt the meat, to salt the fish, to salt the cheese. You use that, and that salt may have been Chametz salt. So it got mixed in Chametz into the salt, which is salting the meat. So it could be mamashut, it could be tam. But the point is, as we've said, it will be nullified before Pesach, and B, you don't have to, you don't have to assume there's any sur there. Robert?
Yeah, so two questions. First question is, when we were talking briefly, when we mentioned salting the meat or the fish on Pesach itself, using a kli that had been used for Chametz, the Shulchan Aruch used the word yesh. There are those who hold, and you said then we should be careful. But normally, if our rule is if it's a yesh on rim, do we not say stam Shulchan Aruch?
It says yesh lahmir.
How do we, okay? So when he
and
uses that terminology, how do we?
Even as only a lechatchila, it's only like a lechatchila, if it's very salty.
But when he uses that terminology, does one assume he wants us to be mahmir in
Yesh
that way?
means one should try to be stringent. One should try to be
okay.
stringent.
That's what I was trying to understand.
It's not yesh hakim, it's a yesh lahmir.
Yeah, right. Got it.
Okay.
And also, so how does what I find difficult is how does the Rama deal with the principle that food is innocent until proven guilty? Because he seems to say we're not relying on that on Pesach. I've forgotten the Hebrew terminology used for that, but there's a hazakah. The food is kosher. So what the Rama's? He's not relying on that, and I just trying to understand why.
He's not relying on that because who said maps the sort of karet, the sort of hametz? We should always be strict. We should assume there's problems everywhere. It's not unanimous.
But does that mean the rest of the year he doesn't rely on it either, or are you saying no, just on Pesach he doesn't rely on it?
No, Pesach because the Pesach is not a taref. It's regular food. Chametz is regular food.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps there's regular
So
Chametz.
the rest of the year, if you had a doubt, he would say you can assume that the food has a hazakah of being. What I'm trying to get my head around is would it?
It depends more. It depends. It's very. It depends what scenario, what thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it mahogany whether we say no mahazikin in surah? Do we don't mahazikin? You're right. Generally, there's a concept of hiskat kashrut, but whether it applies to foods or not is not so simple. And certainly not on Pesach, it's not simple at all.
Okay, I guess my question was, I was wondering whether Ramah would apply that principle, would apply the principle or the rest of the year.
We'd have to work through a specific scenario to try to.
Okay. So it's not easy, simple question. Thank you. No. Let me interrupt.
Hazak. Okay, so now let's turn to. 12 minutes left. Let's do Sif Yud first, then we'll come back to Sif Tet. Okay, let's go to Sif Yud, Sif 10. Okay, the other Sifim are about different kinds of salt and different kinds of. Okay, so let's now go to Sif Yud. Says Shulchan Aruch. So we have seen, let's introduce the Sif. We have seen that Pesach is different to all other things. So far, we've seen it different in one aspect. And that is, as we've learned, if it got mixed in on Pesach, something which would normally need 1 in 60 doesn't apply and it doesn't become nullified. So it's a chumrah of Pesach for 2 reasons which we said at the beginning of the shiur. Now, because we find, and that, according to the majority of the Rishonim, is an explicit Gemara. There's a chumrah of Pesach. Now, because we find this chumrah of Pesach, do we then go on our own accord and say that just like we found the Hachamim of the Gemara were concerned with Pesach and they added on a stringency, we should of our own accord extend this stringency to other scenarios? But Hazal didn't talk about, but because we found them in one specific scenario was strict, we should say that we should extend that to other scenarios. So which scenario? We're going to see 2. Firstly, now, is the concept of Noten, Ta'am, Li-Fgam. Noten, Ta'am, Li-Fgam is a major principle in Hilchot Kashrut, which is that, I've mentioned it a couple of times already, I'll repeat quickly, that when something has been for more than 24 hours in a pot, and the taste comes out, it's called Ta'am Li-Fgam. It's called a blemish taste. It's not a good taste anymore. And although Hachamim don't do it in the first instance, Badi Avad post facto, it's fine. So during the rest of the year, example, a non-Jewish neighbor left his pot in your house and it's been sitting there, and then you want to cook your food, you want to cook your chicken soup for Friday night, and you cook your soup, and then after cooking it, you realize, oh my gosh, this is the pot which the neighbor mistakenly left in my house. Oh my gosh, he cooked in it taref a few days ago. He cooks his meat, he cooks his pork in it. So this is my whole chicken soup becomes non-kasher. No, it doesn't. The whole thing becomes kasher. The whole thing is completely kasher. Why? Because the pot hasn't been used for the last 24 hours. The pot was clean. Obviously, when you cooked your soup, you looked in the pot and you saw it was clean. And so the walls of the pot are full of bliot, or full of absorptions of taref food. Yes, and those absorptions came out. And that's fine, because what came out is a taste which has been in the walls for more than 24 hours. And the Hachamim said that more than 24 hours isn't a problem. Even within 24 hours, midoraita, from the Torah's perspective, you can lechatchila cook. It's absolutely fine. If not, you can take a non-kosher pot from the Torah and cook in it if it hasn't been used for 24 hours. Hachamim said don't do it in the first instance. Why? Atu ben yomo, because then you may mix up and you may cook it within the 24 hours, and the taste may come out, and the taste will be a problem, and it'll make the thing taref. But it's a gezerah d'Rabbanan, and the gezerah d'Rabbanan is only lechatchila. B'di avad, everyone agrees it's mutar. So we don't find any. That's the rest of the year. Now, Pesach. I, by mistake, on Pesach, I realized I took out, or before Pesach, it could be you're still, people nowadays, they like to cook a week before Pesach and cook their food before Pesach, and freeze it. Lots of people like to do that. And sometimes there's still Chametz utensil lying around, and by mistake I used the Chametz utensil and I cooked within it food for Pesach. And this utensil has not been used in the last 24 hours. It's a clean utensil that hasn't been used in the last 24 hours. Now, nowhere in the Talmud does it say that this Humrah, which we've learned earlier on Pesach, that 1 in 1,000 is nullified, is extended. Some of the Rishonim, however, said that since we found in one aspect of Pesach, we found this Humrah, we should extend it to other scenarios as well. And we should say that on Pesach, although the rest of the year, Noten Ta'am Li-Fgam is Asur, but is Mutar, on Pesach we should say Noten Ta'am Li-Fgam is Asur. The Shulchan Aruch rejects that. Straight out. No two opinions, straight out. Says the Shulchan Aruch Sif Yud. Noten Ta'am Li-Fgam Mutar Gam Ba Pesach. Even on Pesach, it's mutar, noten, ta'am Li-Fgam. So even on Pesach itself, you cooked in a chametz utensil. Now, if you're cooking on Pesach itself, it's going to be a utensil which hasn't been used in the last 24 hours. It's fine to eat that food on Pesach. Don't extend what chumrah we found in one place to other places. Says the Rama, v'yesh mahmirin. However, some are stringent, and they say that since we found that the Hachamim Asad forbade one b'mashu, therefore, so too we should be strict on 10 Ta'am Li-Fgam. And says the Rama, v'chen nohagin be'ela medinot, and this is the custom in Ashkenaz, in Europe. That was their custom. Umakom shesh minhag la'achmir, and those who have the custom to be machmir, as I'm telling you that the custom is, says the Rama, afilu mashu b'noten Ta'am Li-Fgam asur, even if it's a double whammy chumrah, that means it's going to be a mashu and noten Ta'am Li-Fgam. It's going to be asur. So again, a fundamental mahloket here, how to understand the chumrah which we found the rest of the year. On Pesach, do we extend it to other things as well? Shulchan Aruch says, no, what we found, we limit it to that. However, we don't extend it to other places. Okay, and this is important, this is relevant. If you cooked in the wrong utensil, that's important to recognize. Okay, any questions? Okay, I think we'll stop here. We got through the most important bits.